A cold night, an alley that should have been empty. A powerful billionaire thinks he can shove his pregnant wife to the ground, leave her bleeding, and walk away as if her life means nothing. What he does not know is that the woman he abandoned will not only survive, she will rise again with proof, allies, and the strength to strip him of everything he thought was untouchable. What follows is a clash of betrayal, survival, and ultimate justice. And trust me, you will not believe the ending until we dive in. Tell us what time you are listening and where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We would love to hear from you. The rain falls hard against the city streets, heavy drops drumming on the rusted trash cans and cracked pavement of a forgotten alley. Neon signs flicker from the main road, casting sickly glows of pink and green that barely reach this shadowed corner. A pregnant woman stumbles forward, her hands clutching her swollen belly. Her breath is shallow, panicked, fogging in the cold night air. Behind her, footsteps echo, steady and unhurried. They belong to a man in an expensive tailored suit, his shoes untouched by the puddles she has tripped through. His face is half hidden under the glow of the street lamp, but his voice carries the sharpness of ice. "You should have known better than to cross me," he says, his words slow, deliberate, each syllable meant to cut. She turns, her eyes wide and filled with a mixture of disbelief and pleading. Her mascara has smudged under the rain, her lips trembling as she whispers his name. "Please, I am carrying your child. We are supposed to be a family." For a brief moment, silence hangs between them, broken only by the sound of rainwater dripping from a fire escape above. He does not soften, he does not bend. Instead, he steps closer, his expensive cologne overpowering the stench of wet garbage and rust. His hand reaches out, not in comfort, but in cruelty. With a sharp push, he shoves her back. Her body collides with the cold brick wall. She gasps, her knees buckling, and then she crumples to the ground. A sharp pain shoots through her abdomen. She presses one hand against her stomach, the other against the slick pavement, as blood begins to mix with the rain flowing toward the gutter. Her cry is not loud. It is broken, weak, barely louder than the storm. "Help! Someone please!" But there is no one. The alley is empty. The world has turned its back. He stands above her, watching. His jaw tightens, as if her suffering is nothing more than an inconvenience. He takes a deep breath, pulls his jacket tighter to shield himself from the rain, and spits words that will burn in her memory forever. "You are nothing. You are weak. I have no use for you anymore." She shakes her head, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, don't leave me here. The baby, the baby." For the first time, his expression shifts. Not with mercy, but with annoyance. He glances at her belly, then at the ground where her blood spreads like ink. He adjusts his cufflinks, a gesture of vanity in the middle of cruelty, and mutters coldly, "That child will never matter to me." The words hit harder than the shove. Her chest tightens, her breath comes in short, painful gasps. Yet, even as her strength fails, she clings to her belly with both hands, whispering to the life inside her. "Stay with me, please, stay with me." Dod. The man turns, his expensive shoes clicking against the pavement. He walks away without looking back. The headlights of his luxury car flare briefly as the engine roars to life. Then the taillights glow red and vanish into the curtain of rain. She is left alone. Alone with the sound of her heartbeat racing against the storm. Alone with the pain tearing through her body. Alone with the rain that washes away the traces of his footsteps but not the violence of his betrayal. The camera of this memory would linger on her trembling hand, pressed against the ground. Her fingers spread, slick with both rain and blood. Her lips move again, her voice nearly lost in the downpour. "We will survive. Somehow, we will survive." And then the night swallows the sound. The memory does not come in flashes. It arrives like a warm blanket, soft and deceptive, covering the sharp edges of the present. She remembers the house they once shared, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, its windows glowing like lanterns against the evening sky. She had thought it was a sanctuary. She had believed it was built not only of bricks and marble but of trust and devotion. In those early days, he held her hand as though it was something precious. His voice carried sweetness then, a melody that convinced her to give up the world she had known. He promised that she would never have to worry again. He promised that she would always be safe under his care. "Trust me," Marcus had said one night, his arm wrapped around her shoulders as they stood before the nursery they were designing together. The walls had been painted in soft cream. A rocking chair sat in the corner, still smelling faintly of polished wood. He pointed at the crib they had chosen and smiled, his teeth gleaming in the warm glow of the chandelier. "Our child will sleep here. We will build a family so perfect that no storm can touch it." She had believed him. She had signed away her career, closing her design firm so that she could focus on their life together. It had not been easy to let go of the business she had nurtured, the late nights drafting plans, the clients who admired her work. Yet his words soothed the sting. "You will not need to work again. I will provide everything. All you need to do is be mine." No. At the time, it had sounded like love. At the time, it had sounded like security. There were candlelit dinners where he poured her wine and spoke about the future. There were summer evenings when they walked by the pool, her dress fluttering in the night breeze while his hand rested gently on her lower back. He whispered promises under the stars. "Forever. That is what you and I are." She can still recall the vacations, the photographs framed on the mantel, her hair blown by the ocean wind, his arm draped casually around her waist, both smiling at the camera. To anyone looking in, they were untouchable, the image of success and affection. But even then, shadows had begun to creep in. Small details, brushed aside, forgotten until now. The way he corrected her in front of friends, always with a smile sharp enough to sting. The way he chose her outfits for parties, telling her, "Wear this, it makes you look like the perfect wife." She had told herself it was care. She had told herself it was guidance. Still, there had been nights when she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when her voice had stopped being hers. Yet the nursery had always pulled her back into hope. She spent afternoons folding baby clothes, pressing her palm against her growing belly, whispering to the child inside. She wanted her baby to feel love, to know warmth even before being born. Every time Marcus walked into the room and kissed her forehead, she believed they were building something together. "Everything I do," he once told her, his hand resting on her stomach, "is for you and for our child." His words had been honey. His eyes had been steady. She had let herself fall deeper into the illusion. Now, in the cold alley of her mind, she sees the truth. Those promises were not threads of love, but chains of control. The house, the dinners, the vacations, all had been carefully arranged illusions to make her dependent, to make her believe she had nowhere else to go. She remembers her own voice in those days, soft and hesitant, always beginning with, "What do you think, Marcus?" Always ending with his approval. The past presses against her chest like a weight. The sweet lies and tender gestures burn now with the knowledge of betrayal. She had traded her freedom for his promises. She had given him her trust, her career, her future. And he had repaid her with abandonment in the rain. The first crack in the mask came on a quiet evening. She had been moving slowly through the house, one hand on her back, the other resting on the curve of her belly. The nursery was nearly finished. A faint scent of fresh paint lingered in the air, mixing with lavender from a candle she had lit. She hummed softly, telling her unborn child that the world waiting outside would be warm and safe. But then she heard it. A voice, muffled at first, drifting down the hallway from Marcus's office. His door was usually closed when he handled business. She had learned not to disturb him during those hours. Yet something about his tone made her pause. It was not the commanding voice of a businessman, nor the affectionate voice of a husband. It was lower, softer, laced with intimacy. She stepped closer, her bare feet soundless against the hardwood floor. "Do not worry," Marcus said into the phone, his words crisp. "When she is gone, everything we planned will fall into place." Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she told herself she had misheard. But then he laughed, a low, cruel chuckle she had never heard before. "She is weak. She will not last much longer. When she disappears, all her shares will transfer to me. And then, my darling, the empire will be ours." The word darling stabbed deeper than a knife. She pressed her palm against the wall, steadying herself. Her heart pounded so hard she feared it might harm the baby. The warmth of the candle back in the nursery now felt like a mocking presence, as if every corner of the house knew the truth before she did. Marcus continued. His voice rose with excitement, almost giddy. "She trusts me completely. She has no idea what is coming. Soon we will not have to hide anymore. I will be free, and you will stand beside me where you belong." Her eyes stung. She bit her lip to stop a sob from escaping. The taste of iron spread across her tongue as she drew blood. Every promise he had ever whispered replayed in her mind, now twisted and poisoned. Forever, family, safety, lies. She wanted to burst into the room, to scream at him, to demand answers. But her body froze. The fear of what he might do if he discovered her listening held her in place. So she remained there, pressed against the wall, tears running down her face in silent streams. Then came the final blow. "Do not worry about the baby," Marcus said with a sneer in his tone. "That child means nothing to me. When she is gone, so is the problem. Nothing will stop us." The phone call ended with the click of finality. Her knees weakened. She slid down the wall until she sat on the cold floor, her hands trembling as they covered her stomach. She whispered through her tears, "He does not want you, but I do. I will protect you." The house, once a haven, now felt like a prison. Every chandelier, every polished surface, every photograph of smiling faces mocked her. They were decorations covering rot. She knew then that Marcus's love had never been love at all. It had been a cage, carefully built to trap her until he no longer needed her. Her body shook, but her mind grew sharper. She reached for her phone, fumbling with slippery fingers, and pressed record. If there was another conversation like this, she would capture it. If he wanted her erased, she would leave proof that she had existed, proof that she had been betrayed. She pressed her forehead against the wall and closed her eyes. The child inside her shifted, a small reminder of life still clinging to her. She held her stomach tighter and whispered, "We will survive. Even if it kills me, I will not let him destroy us." The candle in the nursery flickered out, leaving the hallway in darkness. The night was colder than usual. Clouds pressed low against the city, smothering the stars, and the streets shone slick with rain. Marcus insisted on taking her out to dinner. His smile looked convincing enough, his arm around her shoulder practiced, but something inside her had already shifted. She knew the words she had overheard were not mistakes. They were plans. The restaurant was expensive, every table draped in white linen, every glass sparkling beneath the golden chandeliers. Guests glanced their way with admiration, whispering about the powerful couple who seemed untouchable. She sat quietly, her hands folded over her stomach, pushing food around her plate. His laughter filled the air as he charmed investors at the next table. Not once did his eyes soften when they met hers. When the dinner ended, he guided her outside, not toward the waiting limousine, but down a side street. The pavement was uneven, glistening under the dim glow of flickering lamps. She hesitated, her instincts telling her to resist. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Where are we going? The car is the other way." He did not answer. His grip on her arm tightened as he steered her into a narrow alley. The scent of spoiled food and damp concrete replaced the perfume of the dining hall. She felt her pulse quicken, her body bracing for something she could not yet name. Finally, he stopped. He released her arm and turned to face her. The false charm was gone, stripped away like a mask at the end of a performance. His eyes were sharp, his jaw tight. "This is where it ends," he said coldly. Her lips parted, her breath shallow. "What do you mean?" "You have become a burden," he replied. "A weakness. I cannot carry dead weight. I cannot build an empire with you clinging to me." She stepped back, her hands instinctively covering her belly. "I am your wife. I am carrying your child. How can you say this?" His laugh echoed off the walls, harsh and bitter. "That child means nothing. You mean nothing. Do you really think I was ever going to let you control anything? No. You are replaceable. And tonight, you are finished." Lo! Her knees wobbled, the world spinning as she tried to process his cruelty. She shook her head, tears welling. "Please, Marcus, do not do this. I love you. We are a family." His expression hardened further. "Love? Do not speak to me about love. The only thing that matters is power, and you stand in the way." Before she could react, he shoved her with both hands. The force sent her stumbling backward. She hit the wet brick wall, then collapsed onto the ground. Pain tore through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly, her dress soaking with rain and something darker. "Marcus!" she cried out, her voice echoing, desperate. "Please, the baby, help me." But he did not bend. He did not move closer. Instead, he adjusted his cufflinks as though brushing off dust. He looked down at her with cold satisfaction. "You are on your own now. Consider this your last night as my wife." With that, he turned. His polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he walked away. She dragged herself forward, her trembling fingers reaching out. "Do not leave me, please." Her words dissolved into the rain. The sound of a car door slamming shut thundered down the alley. The engine roared, headlights cutting briefly through the dark, and then taillights disappeared into the night. She was left in silence, save for the storm, and her ragged breathing. Her body curled protectively around her stomach as she whispered through clenched teeth. "Hold on, little one. Please hold on." Rain poured harder, mixing with the crimson pooling beneath her. Alone in that forgotten alley, she understood the truth completely. The man she once loved was gone, and in his place stood a stranger capable of leaving her to die. The alley was quiet except for the rain. Each drop struck the pavement with a rhythm that matched her shallow breathing. She lay curled against the cold ground, her dress heavy with water, her arms wrapped tightly around her belly. Pain pulsed through her in waves, sharp and unrelenting. It felt as though her body was breaking apart from the inside, yet her spirit clung to a single thought. The baby. "Stay with me," she whispered through cracked lips. Her voice was faint, swallowed by the storm. "We will survive. I promise." Her fingers searched for something to hold on to, sliding over the slick bricks and puddles until they closed around the base of a broken bottle. The glass cut into her skin, drawing fresh blood, but she hardly noticed. The only thing she felt was the desperate need to stay conscious. If she closed her eyes, she feared she might never open them again. Images of Marcus's betrayal flashed in her mind. The cruel smirk as he turned away, the sound of his car engine fading into the night. For a moment, rage replaced the fear. How could he abandon her, the woman who had given up everything, the child who carried his name? That anger gave her strength, enough to push her trembling body onto her knees. Her breath came ragged. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. She collapsed again, gasping as another wave of pain tore through her. Tears blurred her vision, mixing with rain until the world became a haze of water and light. She pressed her hand firmly to her belly, whispering to the life within her. "You are not alone. Mama is here. We will not give him the satisfaction of losing." She dragged herself forward, inch by inch, toward the faint glow at the end of the alley. Each movement scraped her knees against the pavement. Each push left streaks of red on the wet ground. Her body screamed for rest, but her heart pushed her onward. The thought of giving up was unbearable. Somewhere in the distance, a voice called out. She froze, straining to listen. The voice grew clearer, closer, though muffled by the rain. A man's voice, concerned, urgent. "Hello? Is someone there?" Her lips trembled as she tried to answer. The sound that escaped was barely more than a whisper. "Help. Please." Footsteps approached, hurried now. A flashlight beam cut through the rain, landing on her fragile form. The man was young, his uniform soaked, the badge on his chest revealing he was a paramedic finishing his shift. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. "My God," he breathed. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands already moving with practiced precision. "Stay with me. Do you hear me? You are going to be okay." She tried to nod, her vision dimming, relief mixed with fear in her chest. The paramedic pressed 2 fingers gently to her neck, checking her pulse, then pulled a radio from his belt. "I need an ambulance immediately. Female, late 20s, approximately 7 months pregnant. Severe trauma, blood loss. Location: East Side Alley near Franklin Avenue. Move fast." He looked back at her, his face steady but his eyes kind. "Do not close your eyes. Look at me. Breathe with me." She clung to his voice, fighting against the pull of darkness. Her breaths came short and shallow, but she matched his rhythm as best she could. In that moment, as the rain poured harder and sirens wailed faintly in the distance, she realized she was not entirely alone. A stranger had found her. A stranger had cared enough to kneel beside her when the man she loved had turned away. Her body shook violently as another wave of pain coursed through her. She cried out, her nails digging into the paramedic's arm. He held her steady, his voice firm but gentle. "Hold on for your baby. Hold on for yourself. Help is on the way." And with those words, she clung to life, refusing to let go. The sirens grew louder until they filled the night. Blue and red lights flickered against the wet walls of the alley, painting everything in shifting colors. The paramedic stayed by her side, his hand never leaving her shoulder. "Stay with me," he repeated, his voice calm but urgent. "Help is here." 2 more medics rushed into the alley, carrying a stretcher. Their movements were quick, efficient, yet filled with care. One knelt to check her vitals, while the other prepared bandages. She barely registered their words. Her world had narrowed to flashes of light, the sound of her baby's heartbeat echoing faintly in her mind, and the warmth of the stranger who had first found her. When they lifted her onto the stretcher, pain shot through her body. She cried out, clutching her stomach. One of the medics leaned closer, his tone firm but reassuring. "We have you. Your baby is still fighting. Hold on." The ride to the hospital blurred into fragments. The ambulance doors slamming shut, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, the oxygen mask pressed against her face, voices counting, shouting, urging speed. She clung to one thought: she and her child were still alive. Hours later, she woke in a hospital bed. The white ceiling above her was unfamiliar, but the steady beeping beside her told her she was still here. A nurse adjusted her IV and smiled gently. "You are safe now. Your baby is safe too. Rest." Tears filled her eyes. She turned her head slowly, and there he was, the paramedic who had found her. His uniform was damp and wrinkled, his hair flattened by the rain. He sat in a chair near the bed, his posture tired but alert. When he saw her looking at him, he stood and approached. "You made it," he said softly. "I told you to hold on, and you did." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Thank you." He shook his head. "No need. Anyone would have done the same." But she knew better. Not everyone would have stopped in that alley. Not everyone would have cared. Over the next few days, he returned often to check on her, even when his shift had ended. His name was Daniel. He was younger than Marcus, yet his presence carried a strength Marcus had never shown. He spoke with kindness, not authority. He listened. He asked how she felt, not what she could give. One night, as she sat propped against her pillows, Daniel placed a small cup of warm tea on her bedside table. "You need strength," he said. "Not just for your body, but for your spirit. What you went through, it would break many people. But you are still here. That means something." She looked at him, her hands cradling her stomach, her voice soft but steady. "He wanted me gone. He thought I was too weak to survive." Daniel's expression darkened. He did not press for details, but his eyes held quiet outrage. "Then he underestimated you. Survival is not weakness. It is proof of strength." Those words sank deep into her heart. For so long, she had been defined by Marcus's control. She had been told what to wear, how to speak, where to go. But here was someone who saw her differently. Not as a possession, not as a burden, as someone capable of choosing her own path. That night, for the first time in weeks, she slept without nightmares. When she woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through the hospital blinds. It touched her face gently, as if reminding her that the world outside still held warmth. Daniel stood at the doorway, preparing to leave for his next shift. Before stepping out, he paused and spoke words that would echo in her mind. "You are safe now. But this is not the end. This is only the beginning." Recovery did not come overnight. Her body was still fragile, her steps uncertain, but her mind had begun to sharpen with each passing day. The hospital room that had once felt like a refuge now became a place of planning. Each morning, she sat upright with a notebook on her lap, the pages filling with ideas, notes, and strategies. The woman who once whispered for survival was now beginning to speak of justice. Daniel had introduced her to a lawyer, a quiet man with sharp eyes who understood discretion. His visits were brief but purposeful. He placed folders on her bedside table, each one containing a piece of the puzzle she needed: bank statements, property transfers, contracts Marcus had tried to keep hidden. The evidence of betrayal was not only emotional, it was financial, it was legal. At first, her hands shook as she opened those folders. Reading the words and numbers felt like reopening wounds, reminders of how thoroughly Marcus had planned her downfall. But with each document she studied, her fear turned into clarity. She was not helpless. She had power she never realized she possessed. One evening, the three of them gathered around the small table in her hospital room. The folders were spread out like weapons. The lawyer tapped a page with his pen. "These recordings you saved," he said, "combined with these financial documents, can tear his empire apart. He thought no one would notice, but you noticed, and now the law will notice too." She leaned forward, her hands resting protectively over her stomach. Her voice no longer trembled. "He believes I am gone. That is his mistake. I will not remain silent." Daniel nodded, his expression firm. "Then we begin preparing for your return. He cannot fight shadows, but he cannot fight the truth either." They worked late into the night, crafting a plan. She would remain quiet for now, letting Marcus believe his scheme had succeeded. Meanwhile, her allies would gather every scrap of proof. Emails, messages, recordings, even whispered testimony from employees who had seen too much. The walls around Marcus's empire would remain standing in his eyes, but behind the scenes, cracks were spreading. The next morning, she listened to one of the recordings on her phone. Marcus's voice filled the room, arrogant and cruel. "Do not worry about her. Once she is gone, the company is ours." Hearing those words again no longer made her collapse in tears. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin line. She saved the file, labeling it with quiet precision. This was no longer only pain, it was evidence. She reached for a fresh sheet of paper and wrote down a single sentence at the top. "He thinks I am dead. That is my greatest advantage." Her mind replayed the moment in the alley, the shove, the cold words. She remembered the sensation of the ground against her palms and the rain mixing with her blood. He had left her to die. Yet here she was, alive, stronger than he could ever imagine. That truth became fuel. The lawyer handed her a new folder before leaving that afternoon. "These are the contracts he manipulated. When the time is right, we will present them. But timing is everything. Until then, you prepare yourself. Not just your case, your presence. When you return, it must be with undeniable authority." She looked down at her hands, once trembling, now steady. She thought of the child inside her, the life that had survived against the odds. This was no longer only about revenge. It was about protection, about legacy, about ensuring that her child would never grow up in the shadow of a man like Marcus. That night, as she closed her notebook, she whispered softly, "He will not see me coming, but when I return, he will never forget." The boardroom was alive with chatter. Polished mahogany tables gleamed under the lights, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his suit perfectly tailored, his smile calculated. Around him, directors and shareholders waited for his next move. He believed the future was secure. He believed he had eliminated his greatest obstacle. "Today," he began, his voice carrying confidence, "we solidify our control. There are no more distractions, no more delays. The company belongs to us. May." The room nodded in agreement. Laptops clicked, pens scratched notes onto paper. Marcus leaned back, savoring the authority he thought he had cemented. Then the doors opened. The sound was small, but it cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned. At first, there was only silence. Then whispers began to spread, low and urgent. She stood in the doorway, alive, dressed in a black tailored suit that hugged her figure, her posture straight, her eyes steady. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her face glowing not with fragility, but with strength. On her arm rested a simple silver bracelet, the same one she had worn in the early days of their marriage. This time, it was not a token of his wealth. It was a reminder of her survival. Marcus's face drained of color. The smile collapsed, replaced by disbelief. He gripped the edge of the table as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. She stepped into the room, each click of her heels echoing against the floor. The whispers grew louder, a wave of shock moving through the crowd. Cameras from the press in the back began to flash, their lights catching the determination in her eyes. "I am sure you did not expect to see me," she said, her voice calm yet cutting. "But I am very much alive, and I am here to reclaim what belongs to me." The room froze. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came. She continued, moving toward the head of the table with deliberate steps. "For months, I stayed silent. For months, you believed your lies had succeeded. But silence does not mean surrender, and absence does not mean defeat." The lawyer Daniel had connected her with entered behind her, carrying a stack of folders. He placed them on the table with a heavy thud that reverberated through the room. Papers spilled across the polished wood, filled with contracts, emails, and recordings. The directors leaned forward, eyes wide. One of them picked up a document and gasped. "These are company accounts, transfers, offshore holdings. This is criminal." Another unfolded a transcript of Marcus's phone call. His words echoed through the room as the recording played aloud. "She is weak. She will not last much longer. When she disappears, all her shares will transfer to me." The sound of his betrayal filled every corner of the boardroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras caught Marcus's expression as sweat gathered on his brow. She did not look away. Her gaze remained fixed on him, steady and unflinching. "You thought you could erase me. You thought you could leave me to die. But you forgot one thing. I am not a shadow you can cast aside. I am your equal. And as of today, I am your superior." The directors began to murmur among themselves, some nodding, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The press scribbled notes furiously, lenses snapping photos of the moment that would soon dominate every headline. Marcus's voice finally broke through, cracked and uneven. This cannot be real. Her reply was simple. It is real, and it is over. The boardroom, once his stage of dominance, had transformed into her arena of justice. The boardroom, once Marcus's kingdom, erupted into chaos. Directors whispered furiously, some clutching the damning documents, others shaking their heads as if refusing to believe. Reporters shouted questions over one another, their microphones thrust forward like weapons. Flashbulbs flared again and again, each burst of light catching the panic spreading across Marcus's face. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked under the weight of the evidence. This is a lie, all of it. She forged these papers. She is trying to destroy me. No. No one moved to defend him. The lawyer standing at her side leaned forward, his tone calm and precise. These documents are verified. Independent audits confirm the transfers. The recordings are authentic. The witnesses are ready to testify. Marcus, your empire is crumbling because of your own greed. Marcus slammed his fist against the table, his eyes wild. I built this empire. None of you would be here without me. His outburst only deepened the silence that followed. The directors shifted in their seats, their loyalty evaporating in real time. One elderly shareholder rose slowly, his voice stern. You may have built it, Marcus, but you poisoned it, and now you have been exposed. The words landed like a gavel. Security guards stepped closer, alerted by the escalating tension. Cameras caught every movement, every twitch of Marcus's hands, every bead of sweat rolling down his temple. He pulled at his tie as if it were choking him, his once commanding posture collapsing into something fragile, desperate. She watched him without flinching. For years she had lived under his shadow, shrinking beneath his commands and cold stares. Now he was the one shrinking, and she stood tall. Her voice was steady when she spoke. You left me to die because you believed no one would ever see the truth. But the truth does not hide forever, and it does not bow to you. Lynn. Marcus staggered back a step, his hand gripping the edge of the table. His eyes darted to the directors, searching for an ally, but they turned away. One by one, they shifted their gaze to her, the woman who had survived, the woman now holding the future of the company in her hands. Another director cleared his throat. We will be calling for an emergency vote. Effective immediately, Marcus will be removed from his position. Control will pass to her. No. The announcement sent the room into an uproar. Reporters shouted louder. Phones buzzed as news spread instantly across the city. Marcus's face turned pale, then flushed red with rage. No, he shouted, his voice breaking. You cannot do this to me. I am Marcus Hale. I am untouchable. But his words rang hollow. They were the cries of a man watching his empire fall brick by brick. Security guards finally stepped in, their hands firm on his arms. He thrashed against them, his voice echoing through the boardroom. This is not over. You will regret this. All of you will regret this. Yet no one listened. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her eyes locked on his. The only one who will regret anything is you. You had everything, and you chose cruelty. Now you have nothing. Tears stung Marcus's eyes. For the first time, his arrogance faltered into despair. He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. The image of power shattered beyond repair. The cameras caught it all. The mighty billionaire brought to his knees, not by enemies from the outside, but by the wife he had underestimated. The reversal of power was complete. The boardroom fell silent after Marcus was escorted out. The echo of his protests still lingered in the air, but they no longer carried power. They were only noise, remnants of a fallen man. The cameras stopped flashing, the reporters lowered their microphones, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of his presence lift from her shoulders. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. Every eye in the room turned toward her. The woman who had been dismissed, humiliated, and left to die now stood at the center of the empire he thought he controlled. She did not tremble. She did not falter. I did not return for revenge, she said, her voice clear and unwavering. I returned for justice, and I returned for the future of my child. The directors nodded, some with shame for not having spoken sooner, others with admiration for her strength. The lawyer placed the final documents in front of her. With a steady hand, she signed her name. The transfer of power was complete. She was no longer just a survivor. She was the leader. News spread within minutes. Screens across the city displayed her face. Headlines flashed with words of survival, betrayal, and justice. Reporters spoke of the shocking turn of events, of the billionaire who thought he was untouchable, and the woman who had risen from the ashes to take his place. But while the world buzzed with the story, her thoughts were simpler, more personal. She placed her hand gently over her belly, feeling the faint movement within. Her child had survived with her. That was her greatest victory. Days later, she stood before the company's staff. Hundreds of employees filled the atrium, their expressions uncertain, waiting to hear what came next. She looked at them not as pawns in Marcus's empire, but as people who deserve dignity and stability. This company will no longer be ruled by fear, she told them. It will be ruled by fairness, by accountability, and by the strength of every person here. We will build something better, together. Applause erupted. For many, it was the first time they had felt hope inside those walls. At home, in the quiet hours of the evening, she walked into the nursery that had once been filled with broken promises. The crib stood ready, the rocking chair by the window waiting. She placed a small blanket inside, the same one she had folded before her world shattered. Only now, it symbolized something new. Not illusions, not chains, but freedom. She lowered herself into the chair, cradling her belly as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains. The silence was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. Her mind drifted to Marcus, broken and powerless, his empire reduced to rubble by his own hand. She felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only closure. He had chosen cruelty, and cruelty had consumed him. She had chosen survival, and survival had carried her here. Daniel visited one evening, bringing flowers for her bedside table. He smiled gently. "You have come a long way," he said. She returned the smile, her eyes soft, but filled with quiet determination. "And I am only just beginning." When night fell, she whispered to her unborn child, "You are safe now. Our life will not be built on lies. It will be built on truth, on strength, and on love." The city outside sparkled with lights, but for her, the glow came from within. She had walked through betrayal, through blood, through abandonment. She had risen again, not only alive but stronger than ever. From victim to survivor. From survivor to leader. From silence to power. Her story was not over. It had only just begun.